Have you ever wondered if a moment of kindness you gave years ago actually saved someone's life, and you just never knew? Christmas Eve. 42nd floor. A shy girl's trembling fingers touched piano keys she had no business playing, and in that single moment, she shattered a CEO's 7 years of silence. The executive gala hall of Altair Corporation gleamed with the aftermath of celebration. Crystal champagne flutes stood abandoned on marble tables. Garlands of white pine framed floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a city dressed in holiday lights. But Janelle Rowan wasn't there for champagne or celebration. She was there to clean up what successful people left behind. At 26, this shy girl had perfected the art of being invisible. Hair pulled back tight, eyes down, moving through rooms like a whisper, quick, efficient, forgettable. That's what cleaners were supposed to be, not quite human enough to notice. The hall was empty now, everyone gone home to their families. Everyone except her. Janelle paused beside the grand piano, a beautiful white Steinway that gleamed under soft, overhead lights. Her cleaning cart sat forgotten. She'd been good once, really good. Her mother used to say Janelle had a gift, the kind you can't teach, you're just born carrying. Perfect pitch. An ear that could pull melodies out of silence. But that was before the hospital room. Before Christmas Eve became the worst night of her life. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Just one note, just to remember what it felt like to matter. She pressed down gently. A single tone sang out, pure, clear, aching. Then another note, and another. The melody spilling from her hands was something she'd written years ago in a church pew when grief felt too heavy to carry alone. Soft, hymn-like, a lullaby for the lost. She didn't hear the elevator doors open. She didn't see the man step into the room and freeze color draining from his face. Declan Hawthorne, CEO, untouchable, unshakable, stood perfectly still, breath caught somewhere between chest and throat. Because he knew that melody. He'd heard it once before, 7 years ago, in the final moments of the worst night of his life. And this shy girl playing it had no idea she'd just opened a door he'd spent years keeping locked. What happens when the song haunting you for 7 years comes back through a stranger's hands? The music stopped abruptly. Janelle's hands jerked back from the keys. She spun around, eyes wide, and saw him, tall, dark, suit expression carved from stone. The CEO. Oh God. I'm so sorry, she stammered, stepping back. I shouldn't have. Declan Hawthorne didn't move. His jaw was tight, hands clenched. For a moment, he looked like a man seeing a ghost. Where did you learn that melody? His voice came out rough, hoarse. I wrote it. Years ago. I didn't mean you wrote it. He said it like an impossibility. She nodded, throat tight, wishing she could disappear. Declan's eyes stayed locked on hers. Then, with visible effort, he straightened, smoothed his expression back into something controlled. Don't play it again. Not tonight. He turned and walked to the elevator, leaving Janelle shaking, completely confused about what just happened. The next morning, Janelle's phone buzzed at 7:00 a.m. HR request report to Human Resources immediately upon arrival. Her stomach dropped. She'd known touching that piano was a mistake. By the time she reached the HR office, her hands were shaking. Ms. Brennan gestured to a chair. Miss Rowan, we received a report that you were in the gala hall last night. Alone. Using company equipment without authorization. I was cleaning, Janelle said quickly. I was assigned that floor. Security footage shows you played for approximately 4 minutes. Janelle's face burned. It won't happen again. Ms. Brennan's expression shifted. The case has been flagged for executive review. Mr. Hawthorne wants to handle this personally. Janelle's heart stopped. The CEO handling a cleaner's case personally. That couldn't be good. An hour later, she stood outside a glass-walled conference room, clutching her employee badge like a lifeline. Through the glass, she could see Declan reviewing something on a tablet. Sharp, focused, untouchable. The door opened. "Miss Rowan, come in." She perched on the edge of a chair like a bird ready to fly. He studied her with those dark eyes like he was trying to see past her skin into something deeper. "Finally, the melody you played. You said you wrote it. Where, when?" 7 years ago, at St. Gabriel Church. I used to go there when I needed to think. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, something quieter. "St. Gabriel," he repeated softly. "On the east side." "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Then, "My girlfriend died 7 years ago. In a fire 2 blocks from that church. The last thing I heard from her, a voicemail, had music in the background. A hymn. Quiet. Gentle. Just like what you played." Janelle's breath caught. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." No one knew. Weight beneath his steady voice. "I don't talk about it. But when I heard you last night..." He shook his head. "I thought I was losing my mind." "What do you say to a man whose grief you've unknowingly touched?" "I won't play it again," she whispered. His expression softened unexpectedly. "You're not in trouble, Janelle. HR overreacted. You were doing your job." He leaned forward slightly. "But I need to ask you something. That night, Christmas Eve, 7 years ago, were you at St. Gabriel Church?" She nodded slowly. "My mother had just died, that morning. I couldn't go home. The church was the only place that felt quiet enough." His eyes widened slightly. "And you played piano there?" "Yes, for hours. I didn't think anyone was listening." Declan sat back, something like wonder crossing his face. Someone was. Leaving that meeting, Janelle felt like the ground had shifted. She didn't understand why a CEO would care about a cleaner's backstory, why a melody she'd written in grief would matter to him. But walking back toward the service elevator, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. For the first time in 7 years, someone had looked at her and seen more than just a woman with a mop. What she didn't know yet, seeing her would cost them both. Because in the shadows of Altair Corporation, people were watching, and they didn't like what they saw. Victor Hale had built his career on reading the room, and right now the room was telling him that Declan Hawthorne had a weak spot. A 26-year-old cleaner who played piano. Victor leaned back in his leather chair, thin smile playing at his lips. Across from him sat Ava Sinclair, head of PR, manicured nails, tapping her tablet. "He flagged her HR case personally," Ava said. "Had it pulled from standard review. That doesn't happen unless someone matters." "Or unless someone's about to become a problem," Victor replied smoothly. "She's leverage." Ava's expression tightened. She'd been passed over for VP last year, Declan's decision. The memory still stung. "What are you thinking?" "The board meeting is in 3 weeks. If Declan looks unstable, distracted, emotionally compromised, they might start questioning his leadership. You want to use her to undermine him. I want to use her to remove him." Victor straightened his tie. "Find me something. Access logs, security footage, anything that makes her look like a liability. Make it convincing." Ava hesitated. This was crossing a line, but the thought of Declan's polished face cracking. "I'll handle it," she said. 2 days later, Janelle arrived for her shift to find Mrs. Halloway waiting by the security desk. Mrs. Halloway was 68, silver-haired with eyes that missed nothing. A former music teacher who'd taken a quiet liking to Janelle over the years. "Evening, dear." Then quietly, "You've been causing quite a stir upstairs." Janelle's stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" "Word travels fast. People are talking about you and Mr. Hawthorne, about that piano." "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know you didn't." Mrs. Halloway's voice was gentle but firm. "But people don't always care about truth when a good story's more interesting. Just be careful, all right." Janelle nodded, unease prickling down her spine. She headed to the 30th floor to start her rounds. Empty offices, silent except for humming computers. She worked methodically, vacuuming, wiping desks, emptying trash. Mindless work that let her thoughts drift. She kept thinking about Declan, about the way he'd looked at her like she was a puzzle he desperately needed to solve, about his girlfriend, the fire, the impossible coincidence of that melody. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the executive suite door was unlocked. Didn't notice until she'd already stepped inside. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood furniture, a desk the size of her apartment. This had to be someone important. She should leave. She knew she should leave, but then she saw it. A small, upright piano tucked near the window. Completely out of place in this sterile corporate space. Her fingers itched. Just one note, she thought. She sat down, pressed a single key. The sound was pure in the silence. Before she could stop herself, her hands found a melody. Not the one from Christmas Eve, something softer, sadder. A piece she'd written after her mother's funeral. She played maybe 90 seconds. Then behind her, "What are you doing in here?" Janelle spun around, heart in her throat. A woman stood in the doorway, early 30s, blonde, immaculately dressed, expression cold. "I was cleaning, I didn't realize. This is a restricted office, you need authorization." "I'm sorry, the door was open." "The door was locked." The woman pulled out her phone, snapping a photo. "I'm reporting this." "Please, I didn't mean..." But the woman was already walking away, heels clicking sharply against marble. Janelle stood frozen, dread pooling in her stomach. She'd just made a terrible mistake. Why would anyone care about a shy girl playing piano unless she'd just become a threat? By morning, the damage was done. Security footage, carefully edited by Ava's team, showed Janelle entering the executive suite and playing piano for several minutes. What it didn't show was the door being left unlocked, her hesitation, or her clear discomfort. It just showed a cleaner breaking rules. Victor presented the footage to the executive team that afternoon. "This is the second incident in a week. The gala hall, now the COO's office. She has a pattern of accessing restricted areas." "Has anyone asked her why?" A board member frowned. "Does it matter?" Ava interjected. "Company policy is clear. Unauthorized access is grounds for immediate termination." "Declan flagged her last case," someone noted. Victor's smile was thin. "Which is exactly why this needs proper channels. We can't have leadership showing favoritism." Murmuring around the table. Agreement. "I recommend immediate suspension pending investigation. We need to send a message that rules apply to everyone." The vote was unanimous. Janelle was escorted out that afternoon, employee badge, confiscated locker emptied. She stood outside Altair Corporation holding a cardboard box, feeling the world crumble. She'd lost her job, her income, her health insurance, all because she touched a piano. Mrs. Halloway found her on a bench 3 blocks away, crying. "Oh, sweetheart, I heard what happened." "I didn't do anything wrong," Janelle choked out. "I know, I believe you." "No one else does." Mrs. Halloway was quiet. Tell me about that melody, the one you played Christmas Eve. Janelle looked up, confused. I wrote it the night my mother died, at St. Gabriel Church. I just needed to feel something. St. Gabriel, that's near where the fire was, 7 years ago. Janelle nodded. There were reports that night. Witnesses heard music. A hymn playing nearby right before the alarms went off. Emergency responders said it helped them locate survivors through the smoke. Janelle's breath caught. You were there, playing piano while people were trapped 2 blocks away. I didn't know. Of course not. But maybe that music mattered more than you realized. Maybe someone needed to hear it. Janelle's hands shook. Declan, his girlfriend. He said she left a voicemail with music in the background. And now you've been punished for playing that same music again. Mrs. Halloway's expression hardened. Someone upstairs doesn't want you close to him, which means you're more important than they're willing to admit. For the first time since being escorted out, Janelle felt anger. Declan Hawthorne didn't lose his temper often. He'd built a reputation on control. People respected him because he never let emotion cloud judgment. But when he saw the suspension notice, something inside him snapped. He stormed into Victor's office without knocking. You suspended her. The executive team voted. Company policy is clear. The door was unlocked. She was doing her job. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Security footage tells a different story. She entered a restricted office and used company equipment for personal purposes. Again. There is no pattern. There's a woman doing her job and you using her as a political pawn. That's a serious accusation. Is it because this looks like a coordinated effort to undermine me before the board meeting? Victor's expression hardened. Be careful, Declan. You're starting to sound paranoid, emotionally compromised. I'm starting to sound like someone who recognizes sabotage. Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so invested in protecting a cleaner. People are starting to wonder about your judgment. Gentlemen. Ava appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Declan turned, jaw tight. AT flagged unusual activity on one of the night staff shared logins. Financial documents were accessed without authorization. When? Victor demanded. 2 nights ago, from the 32nd floor server room. Declan's stomach dropped. During Janelle's shift. Ava nodded. The timestamps match. That's impossible. She doesn't have access to financial systems. Night staff share a general access account, but technically, it can reach other networks if someone knows what they're doing. Janelle's a cleaner, not a hacker. Victor stood triumphant. But she does have building access at night when no one's watching, and she's already demonstrated a pattern of going where she shouldn't. This was a setup, but the evidence was right there, time-stamped, logged. I want to see the IT report, full access logs, every login, every action. Of course, Ava said smoothly. I'll have it sent to your office. As she turned away, Declan caught something in her expression. Satisfied, almost smug, and he realized Ava was part of it too. That night, Declan did something he hadn't done in 7 years. He went to St. Gabriel Church. The building was old, stone walls, stained glass windows, empty except for candles burning near the altar. He sat in a pew and pulled out his phone. He'd kept the voicemail all these years, could never bring himself to delete it. His girlfriend's voice shaky. Declan, there's a fire. I'm trapped on the 3rd floor. I can see smoke under the door. I'm scared. Then, in the background, music. Soft, gentle, a hymn-like melody. There's someone playing piano. I can hear it through the walls. It's actually kind of beautiful. I'm going to keep listening. If you get this, I love you." The voicemail ended. Declan sat in silence, tears streaming down his face. He'd blamed himself for 7 years, for not being there, for not answering his phone in time. But listening now, he realized something. The music in that voicemail, the melody that kept her calm enough to leave a coherent message to give rescue teams her exact location, that music had saved lives. And if Janelle had been here that night playing piano while his world fell apart, she was part of the reason he'd been able to hear his girlfriend's voice one last time. Part of the reason the rescue team found survivors. She'd saved people, including him. And now she was being punished for it. Sometimes the most inspirational acts are the ones we never meant to give, but what happens when the powerful try to bury them. Declan found Janelle at Mrs. Halloway's apartment the next morning. The older woman answered the door. "She's in the living room. She's not doing well." Janelle sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red and swollen. She looked up when Declan entered. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "I need to tell you something about that night. About the fire." He sat across from her and played the voicemail. Janelle's face went white. Her hands started shaking. "That's me," she whispered. "That's the melody I was playing." Declan nodded. "You were there, playing piano while she was trapped. Your music kept her calm, gave her the clarity to leave that message and tell rescue teams exactly where she was." Tears spilled down Janelle's cheeks. "I couldn't save her. But because of you, I got to hear her voice one last time. Because of you, other people got out alive. I didn't know anyone was listening. You were invisible. Just like you've been invisible here. But that doesn't mean you didn't matter." Janelle covered her face, sobbing. Mrs. Halloway put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'm going to fix this," Declan said. "I'm going to prove you were set up, but I need you to trust me. Why do you care so much? Because 7 years ago you saved me without knowing it, and I'm not going to let anyone punish you for that." It took 3 days of 18-hour shifts pulling security footage, interviewing IT staff, cross-referencing access logs. What he found made his blood boil. The executive suite door had been deliberately left unlocked by Ava's assistant. The financial documents had been accessed from the night staff account, but timestamps showed activity during a 15-minute window when Janelle had been verifiably on a different floor, captured on 3 separate cameras. Someone had used her access. Someone who knew her schedule. The Gala Hall footage showed the original files, unedited, showing Janelle playing for less than 2 minutes before stopping. Nothing warranting suspension. He called an emergency board meeting. Victor and Ava sat at the conference table, clearly expecting routine discussion. Declan played the unedited security footage, showed the access logs, showed proof that Janelle had been framed. "You wanted me to look unstable, emotionally compromised," he said to Victor. "You used an innocent woman as leverage to undermine me before a board meeting. When that didn't work fast enough, you manufactured evidence to make her look like a criminal." The room went silent. "Do you have proof?" a board member asked. "I have proof the evidence against Janelle was fabricated. I have proof Ava's team edited security footage." Victor stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous." "Sit down," the board chair said sharply. "We'll be launching a full internal investigation. Victor, you're suspended pending review. Ava, you're being reassigned out of PR effective immediately." "This is insane," Ava protested. "Enough. Meeting adjourned." Janelle received the call that afternoon. Suspension lifted, full back pay, formal apology, and an invitation to meet with Declan Hawthorne. She stood in his office 2 hours later, hands clasped. "Sit, please." Declan gestured to a chair. "I owe you an apology, not just for what happened this week, for 7 years of not knowing, walking past you every day and never seeing you. You didn't know me. I should have. You saved my life, Janelle. You saved other people's lives, and you've spent 7 years being invisible because that's what we taught you to be. I'm calling a company-wide meeting tomorrow. I'm going to tell them what happened, who you are, what you did, because you deserve to be seen, really seen." Tears welled in Janelle's eyes. "We all need to be seen," he said gently. "When justice finally arrives, it doesn't whisper, but can one moment of recognition heal 7 years of invisibility?" The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 10:00 a.m. on a Friday. Every employee in Altair Corporation, from executives to custodial staff, filed into the main auditorium. Rumors had been flying. People knew something big was happening. Janelle sat in the back row, hands clasped, heart threatening to beat out of her chest. Mrs. Halloway sat beside her, a steady presence. At exactly 10:00, Declan Hawthorne walked onto the stage. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here. I'm not going to waste your time. Something happened this week that I need to address directly." He clicked a remote. The screen behind him lit up with Janelle's employee photo. She felt her face burn. Most of you don't know Janelle Rowan. She works night shift, cleaning crew. The kind of job where you're supposed to be invisible, where people don't look at you, don't thank you, don't think about you at all. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Last week, Janelle was suspended for allegedly accessing restricted areas and misusing company equipment. The evidence looked damning, official. He clicked again. The fabricated footage appeared. But it was fake, edited by members of our own PR team to make Janelle look guilty of something she never did. The murmuring grew louder. Shocked. Why? Because I'd shown interest in her case. Because certain people wanted to make me look emotionally compromised before a board meeting. And Janelle, someone with no power, no voice, no ability to defend herself, was convenient. He paused, letting that sink in. But here's what those people didn't know. 7 years ago on Christmas Eve, there was a fire 2 blocks from St. Gabriel Church. 9 people were trapped. 4 died. 5 survived. Complete silence now. My girlfriend was one of the survivors, at least long enough to leave me a final voicemail. In that voicemail, in the background, there was music. A soft, gentle melody. She said it kept her calm, gave her the clarity to tell emergency responders exactly where she was. Declan looked directly at Janelle, expression softening. Janelle Rowan was the person playing that piano. She was 19. Her mother had just died that morning. She went to St. Gabriel Church because she didn't know where else to go. And she played. For hours. Not knowing anyone was listening. Janelle's vision blurred with tears. Because of her music, my girlfriend was able to leave a coherent message. Because of her music, rescue teams found survivors faster. Because of her music, lives were saved. He turned back to the crowd. And this week we punished her for playing piano. We accused her. We escorted her out like a criminal. Because we've built a culture where people like Janelle are supposed to stay invisible. Where kindness doesn't matter. Where the only thing that counts is power. His voice grew harder. That ends now. Victor Hale is no longer with this company. Ava Sinclair has been reassigned, and anyone else who thinks they can use vulnerable people as pawns, you're on notice. Applause started somewhere in the middle rows, then spread. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. Janelle sat frozen, tears streaming. Declan held up a hand. The applause gradually died. "Janelle, would you come up here, please?" Mrs. Halloway squeezed her hand. "Go on, dear." Janelle stood on shaking legs and made her way to the stage. Every eye was on her. Declan met her at the steps, offering his hand. "I want everyone here to understand something," he said, still addressing the crowd. "Kindness isn't weakness. Compassion isn't a liability. And the day you thought someone was invisible, that person might have been the one saving your entire world." The applause rose again, thunderous this time. Janelle stood beside Declan, overwhelmed, barely able to breathe. "You deserve to be seen," he said softly, just to her. "You always did." She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. But for the first time in 7 years, she felt it. Seen. Valued. Real. And in a room full of hundreds, that feeling was everything. This heartwarming moment of justice wasn't just for her, it was for everyone who'd ever felt invisible. Justice had arrived, but healing would take something more. 3 months later, spring arrived. The city transformed from gray winter to soft green. Cherry blossoms lined the streets. Warm sunlight replaced harsh cold. Altair Corporation was hosting its annual spring gala. Janelle stood backstage in the 42nd floor event hall, wearing a simple navy dress Mrs. Halloway had helped her pick out, hands shaking. In 15 minutes, she was supposed to walk onto that stage and play piano, in front of 300 people. Declan had asked her personally. A new arrangement of December Lullaby, he'd said. Something honoring the past, but looking toward the future. She'd agreed before fear could stop her. But now, waiting in the wings, fear came roaring back. What if she messed up? What if people laughed? "You're going to be brilliant." She turned. Declan stood there in a dark suit, expression warm. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I thought I could, but—" "You can. You've played in an empty church while the world fell apart around you. You've survived being blamed for things you didn't do. You've stood in front of this entire company and let them see you. This is easy." "It doesn't feel easy." "I know." His voice softened. "But you're not alone this time. I'll be right there, front row, watching." She met his eyes and something in them steadied her. "Okay," she breathed. The MC's voice echoed, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Janelle Rowan." Declan squeezed her hand, once then stepped back. Janelle walked onto the stage. Lights were bright. Faces in the crowd were a blur. But she found Declan in the front row, and he smiled, gentle, encouraging. She sat at the piano, placed her fingers on the keys, and played. The melody started soft, the original December lullaby. But then it shifted, grew, became something richer, more complex. Notes that spoke of sorrow, yes, but also hope, survival, finding light in the darkest places. She played with eyes closed, lost in the music, and for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. When the final note faded, the room erupted. Janelle opened her eyes, stunned. People were standing, clapping, some wiping tears. She looked at Declan, and he was smiling, really smiling, in a way that transformed his face. She stood bowed awkwardly and hurried off stage, heart pounding. Declan met her in the hallway and pulled her into a hug. "You were perfect," he murmured. "I was terrified." "I know, but you did it anyway." They stood there, neither willing to let go. Finally, Declan pulled back enough to look at her. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." He led her through corridors she'd cleaned 100 times until they reached a small garden terrace she'd never known existed. String lights hung overhead. Cherry blossoms drifted on the breeze. The city glittered below. "I used to come here after she died," Declan said quietly. "It was the only place I could think clearly." Janelle waited, sensing he had more to say. "For 7 years I've been stuck, trapped in that night, blaming myself, refusing to let anyone in because it felt like betraying her memory." He turned to face Janelle fully. "But you showed me that music doesn't just live in the past. It moves forward. It changes. It becomes something new." "Declan, you pulled me out of the past, Janelle. Your music did that. And now I think I'm finally ready to live in the present. Maybe even the future." Janelle's heart ached in the best possible way. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means I'd like to know you. Really know you. Not as a memory or a coincidence or a shy girl who happened to save my life." He stepped closer. "Just as you, if you'll let me." She looked up at him, this man who'd seen her when no one else had, who'd fought for her, who'd given her back her voice. "I'd like that," she said softly. Declan reached for her hand, and she let him take it. They stood together in the garden, spring snow, late and unexpected, beginning to fall around them, like the world itself was giving them a second chance. "Thank you," Janelle said, "for seeing me." "Thank you," Declan replied, "for saving me." And in the quiet space between them, something new began. Not an ending, a beginning. This was the most heartwarming and inspirational ending this shy girl could have imagined, and she was finally ready to believe she deserved it.